Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Amazing podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Amazing, and we bring you week in and week out some of the innovators, the creators in this space. And we love talking about what they build. And if you like what you hear, definitely go to our website and check out all of the conversations and all of the other content that we put out there. It's amazic.com. That's AMAZIC.com. I have with me today Victor Palma, who is the strategic architect at Rackspace Technology. And I have with me also Kevin Carter, who is the product director at Rackspace. Rackspace needs no introduction. The organization has been around for really long, but I'm curious to know really, how they've evolved and how they've been able to innovate and stay relevant with so much change always happening in this space. And we're going to talk about all of their work related to Kubernetes and beyond. So I'm really excited today to be talking to Victor and Kevin. Uh, Hey guys, it's wonderful having you on the show. Thanks for joining. I was hoping you could get us started by telling us a bit about yourselves and just your background, what you've done thus far, and just your interests in the broad world of cloud.
Hey, Twain, thank you very much for having us. This should be fun. I always love talking technology with people. So I was actually, you could say my career started at Rackspace back in 2010. I came in and I did a lot of stuff, especially around the observability space and stuff like that. I did different things. As far as like Kubernetes goes, 2015, I and a couple of other Rackers, we pitched a product to Rackspace about Kubernetes, which in reality it was too early to the market. Probably about, I want to say about 6 years too early to the market, which pretty much we said that Kubernetes was great, and at some point people would not care so much about the bits that power Kubernetes, and they just want to use it, right? Which is kind of where we are today. After that, I went and did some other stuff at IBM, Kyndryl. Went to startup, and now I'm back at Rackspace, mainly to work on Kubernetes. And I couldn't do it, I couldn't find any other troublemakers like myself. And, Kevin, it's an absolute partner in crime.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. Wow. That's a while back that you joined Rackspace, and amazing that you got a second chapter with Rackspace. Kevin, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And again, just to echo Victor, thank you very much for having us on. It's really a pleasure. So again, thank you. And hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Carter. I'm the product director for the OpenStack IBU. And I have a really similar story to Victor, actually. I started at Rackspace in 2011. And my original hire was back on our public cloud. I was working on our OpenStack public cloud. Well, what would eventually become our OpenStack public cloud. And then, kind of transitioned into some different roles, moved into our dedicated OpenStack team, worked a lot upstream into the OpenStack ecosystem and community. Yeah, I did a lot with our private cloud offering, worked with Victor a lot internally throughout the years in our first stint at Rackspace. But yeah, I left in 2018, I think it was, and then went to Red Hat for a while. Went to a couple startups, did some things out in the ether, and then recently came back. It was in mid 2023, came back in to really revitalize, revamp, and create this technology organization that as we always have been. It's just we had not necessarily exercised these muscles, and so really happy to be pairing up and teaming up with Victor here to really come in and make an impact.
Right. Wow, really similar stories there. I'm curious to know about the story of Rackspace itself, because it's been around for ages. When was it founded actually? How long? How many years has it been?
We're 25 years old. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so
Very
yeah, we're we're old enough to rent a car and get a discount, right? And so which is good. Yeah.
There's very few companies that have stuck around for that long in this space.
Especially in this space, yeah.
Yeah, and very few that have actually been able to pivot, make changes, and still be relevant, today. And I was just wondering if you could tell us about just the evolution of Rackspace and where it is today, and sort of trace a few of the key milestones along its story.
Sure. I mean, I can kick it off, and Victor, you know, definitely fill in the blanks, right? But I mean, we're, like I said, 25 years old, started in 1998, and life at Rackspace really started quite differently, right? It was managed hosting. It was basically basic servers as a service, right? One of the very first that you could call in and say, hey, I need something that runs Apache. Right. And somebody would go off and get you, you know, that working, and then standing up data centers and building our own data centers, and then running, you know, creating a virtual private clouds and ecosystems around server virtualization. First with VMware, and then later on coming down the line and really partnering with Ansel Labs and NASA and a few other organizations to kick off the OpenStack project, which then empowered our public cloud and later our private cloud. And so, like, if you look at throughout the years, we've always had the ability to find a niche in the market and then and build something meaningful. But I think what's more impactful than any of that is that the fact that we're actually able to maintain these things for a long time. Right. I mean, that like server virtualization systems that we had, obviously it's not the same as when it started, but it's still a product offering that we have. And then our OpenStack public cloud, right, was the #2 largest OpenStack public cloud behind Amazon when you know we launched it and we were going hard into that space. It's still a very, very large global, you know, public cloud, but it is it's something that we have maintained, we have built, we have maintained, and we have created value for our customers over the longevity of these products. And so, yeah, I think that's, you know, the high level TLDRs of where we've been and where we're going.
Yeah, and I just want to echo to that. Like, I think, as Kevin mentioned, we've always found spaces and niches to go after or just try to evolve, right? So, you know, when I came in, we were doing, we started vertical that it actually was kind of advanced for its time. It was this SRE DevOps today, right, product that we were doing back in 2010, right, which was we were doing code deployments for customers. We were doing Wiley Interscope to monitor customers' applications. So yeah, and we package all of this as a bundle, right? We probably didn't do that good of a job, but we have customers there that stuck with us since then, right? I still, even when I came back now, there are still customers that I still had that are still part of that service, right? Because we do really, really good job. And then, you know, we also did stuff around DevOps, right? So we actually we're one of the first that offer like DevOps as a service, right? And, you know, we took a stab at that. This is, you know, dating us back to like Chef, right? We use Chef, we use, you know, all of these things. And we, through all of those processes, we learn a ton of things, right? Like what worked, what didn't work, or, you know, maybe we worked too good, right? Because DevOps was one of those things that as we, you know, brought in customers, we did a really good job. And then, you know, they didn't really see necessarily the value of what we did, but even though we were doing a lot of stuff in the back end, right? And that's, I think that's been challenging of any industry, right? Like as you get better or as you provide a really good service, people tend to see like, oh, well, they're not really doing that much for me, right? But we've been, you know, really good at operating that. We're really good at that.
Very interesting. You know, Kevin, you mentioned OpenStack a bunch of times, and I think we're going to be talking quite a bit about that in this conversation. But yeah, I'm curious to know because, you know, obviously, you know, all of the buzz is around Kubernetes these days, and you guys have a managed Kubernetes solution, and you're also doing things beyond Kubernetes, things like OpenStack. And I want to touch a bit about all of this, but talk to us about just the focus today of Rackspace when it comes to all of these different technologies, because, you know, some may see them as complementary and that they can coexist. Some see them as, you know, you need to choose one or the other.
Sure.
What's Rackspace's take on all of these different technologies and the different solutions that you guys offer? What are your priorities? How do you see them all next to each other?
You know what? I see pretty much all of these things as complementary, not they're not in competition with one another. And I think, I mean, actually to say they're not is a bit of a lie, right? I mean, they're all competing for resources, right? And headspace and mind space, but they really are, you know, they're complementary. If a customer wants to run VMware and they want to run
Mhm.
OpenStack and they want to run them side by side, I want to create a solution that makes that possible. And not so that it is like OpenStack controlling everything or VMware controlling everything. It is use the right
Mhm.
tool for the right job kind of thing. And so
Mhm.
there's, because we are, like Victor mentioned, good at operating, good at building ecosystems and good at maintaining platforms, we can create, use cases where customers can come in and need to run, like I said, like a VMware environment for a certified workload, but then also be able to put workloads that aren't certified on an OpenStack cloud or a Kubernetes environment, or any of the other different ecosystems that they want to play in or have a support experience with. And so I don't think that they're in conflict with one another. I think they're complementary, and I think what we're doing with them today is actually it's unique in the market. It's pretty novel, in that we are creating an experience that customers can use Kubernetes, and it's not or they're using Kubernetes and OpenStack. They're using Kubernetes and VMware, and we're creating an extension of those different platforms within those different ecosystems, so that customers can really quite literally use the right tool for the right job and have a supported, rich experience for it.
Mhm. Mhm. Victor, anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think just to quote, John Gates, one of our previous Rackspace CTOs, right? He coined the term and said that, cloud is for everyone, but not for everything. I think you could take that analogy and place it for everything, right? Kubernetes is great for everyone, but not for everything, right? And I think that's just to echo, stuff that Kevin said is, I think at the end of the day, it's part of your strategy, right? You cannot just be all in one. I mean, if we go back and look at mainframe, right? People have been trying to take out mainframe for decades now, and it's still there, right? It's still
Yeah.
at some of the organizations, and mainframe's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, right? Eventually it will, but it's a transition period, right? And I think that's where, technologies like Kubernetes and OpenStack, and as Kevin mentioned, it's a complementary to each other, right? Like what works right now, if you're in VMware, it might not be ready to go to containers, right? There's a monolithic application, you might not be ready to do that, but you could probably deploy it in OpenStack, maybe save some money there if that's what your business goal is. But if it's not, it's a way for you to get ready and use a cloud, right? Whether it's public or private, it forces you to change in the way that you do things and you think, right? Doing automation, thinking about, when my application is going to fail versus I need to keep this thing, right? And this sort of gets us into additional conversations that, I've had with different people, where it's all about, VMware, you place a lot of your application risk into the infrastructure, right? You use like vMotion and stuff like that to do that. As you start moving into public cloud, you start thinking about the application differently. You start sharding, you start doing other things. And then if you add Kubernetes to the mix, right, now you have a world of possibilities, because, you could use the API gateway pattern to do many things and present an application that is running both in OpenStack and Kubernetes. So it's not just a one size fits all. I think it's, it's the right tool for the right job.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow, interesting. That's quite a start, and we've covered a lot of ground already in terms of just different types of tooling, and that the complementary, and that you don't need to choose just one of them. Some really interesting points you made there, about just how Rackspace is able to support so many of these options. I wanted to talk a bit beyond the tooling and talk a bit about the operations that's behind the tooling, which really is where a lot of the art is in all of this. Um, and you guys and even others, the term used as day two operations, just managing these tools and just designing workflows around it that work across different teams. What are some of the key challenges and obstacles that you see organizations dealing with, that you guys are out to actually solve, that you think are hard challenges to solve?
That's a tough question, right? Because I don't think there is a one size fits all answer, right? I think it depends on the organization that you're talking to. But I think at the end of the day, people, right? I think people are the biggest challenge, right? We are wired in a way that change is difficult. So anything that requires change, we put our biases on, and we start, we need to be dragged and kicked sometimes. So I think that's the biggest challenge. Technology is the simplest thing, right? If it doesn't work, then, you know, if you're doing open source, you go look at the open source and figure out what's going on at the code, and you can make it, you know, you could, with a lot of duct tape and glue and caffeine, you can make it, you know, work the way you want it. But people, you know, I think that's the biggest challenge. So that's my opinion. I don't know, Kevin, I'm sure Kevin has a different opinion.
No, I have a really similar opinion actually, and that is, you know, it is that change. It is that change management, understanding how to apply the change and affect the change and keep things running, keep things happy, right? The old adage, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it. But it's not about it. It's like change is good. Change needs to happen. We need to be able to apply patches in our environment to mitigate CVEs or create better performance experiences or things like that. And that change, the managing of that change is difficult, and I think that's where like a partner like Rackspace actually really excels. And I think it's where small teams struggle, especially when a project becomes a product and it becomes long in the tooth, right? And so they're supporting customers on it. They're running. They're you know, for that first, let's call it 10 months, they were, you know, deving really hard. Change was all the time, but they didn't really have to worry about pulling things forward. They were just always at the forefront of whatever they were building. And then release 1 happens, and that's when I guess the hard work actually starts, right? That's where you have to actually start building in those day 2 operations. You have to start caring whether or not something goes down and how to you know, munge it through the different gyrations of running through different workloads. And I think that's echoing in a lot of the enterprise tooling that you see out there today, where everything has some form of an LTS-like product, an LTS-like release. I think it's a place where a lot of operators struggle with Kubernetes because the release cycles are really short. I think they are really well managed, but they're short. And so people are trying to, you know, how do I affect change on a really constant basis? Right. If you were running 1.28, right, Kubernetes 1.28, it's EOL
Yep.
as of last month, right? I think it was October 24th or something like that. But I mean, that's a really short cycle because 1.28 came out in January or something like that. And so it's hard for people to grip with. And again, this is where, you know, a managed service provider who revels in that change, who enjoys that change, or enjoys the pain and suffering that comes with managing change, we are able to help customers kind of guide through that.
Wow, pretty interesting. I'd like to dig a little bit more into that and just ask about your managed Kubernetes platform. Do you look at it more as product, or you look at it more as a services team that helps your customers manage things using like a team that's there with talent, or a blend of both? What's the mix? And tell us a bit more about some of the key features. You mentioned automatic updates or keeping up with updates and just release cycles as one of the features. Could you tell us a bit more about your managed Kubernetes service? Describe it for us and some of the key features that it brings.
Sure. So I'll start. So I think it's important to first just define what managed Kubernetes is, right? I think it might mean differently to different peoples, but managed Kubernetes to me is basically just providing, the initial is just providing, you know, management of the control plane and updates, right? Seamless updates. What our platform does is actually that plus more, right? So we have a team that does help with the architecture. And, you know, if I was to look at this on a scale going from, you know, let's just say that the left is much more of a custom solution depending on your needs, versus going all the way to the right where you want to do everything and you just need something like Magnum, right? So that will help you deploy an initial version of Kubernetes. And then you have something in the middle, which is kind of like Spot, right? And Spot is, and I'll let Kevin talk about Spot, but the bottom line is, depending on where your journey is, we could help from all the way from architecting all the way to manage, operate, and then something different that we do is transfer, right? We actually take pride in that model, right? Where we could build it, you know, architect it, build it, deploy it, operate it for you, give your team to get comfortable with it, And then we start a transition plan so your team can operate it. Usually it ends up being a combination of us staying for the duration, and then after that, just to be able to provide team with additional help. Now, what we do or what the features are, as you know, if you boot up a Kubernetes, managed Kubernetes, usually you just get a credentials file and an API endpoint, right? But then all the hard work comes after that, right? This is where that day two operations also kicks in, right? Like, how am I going to integrate it into, like, do I have SSO, right? I need a group that manages the infrastructure, but then I want to give teams access to Kubernetes. Do you do a shared cluster, or do you do a cluster per team, right? All of those have implications and cost. It has real implications to the business, right? But if we move past that, right, again, it's like, how are you going to manage SSO? Like, what features do you need? You need multi-tenancy. Well, are you going to be deploying something like Kamaji with, and then use other things like Capsule to, if you're doing a single cluster or multi-tenancy on a single cluster, right? So all of these things need to be tested, need to be thoroughly vetted. And especially if you're also adding, like, operators, which operators are really good, but if you don't do enough testing, you could put yourself in a world of hurt, because just even removing it might cause you to remove your entire clusters, whatever's running in your cluster, right? And all of this is things that you need to keep in mind. And again, Kubernetes is amazing. It gives you a lot of things for you to be able to do and make it do whatever you want it to do. But that's a double-edged sword, because if you're not careful, you can end up, cutting off a limb because it's such a sharp object.
No,
Kevin,
I think you crushed it. I was like, I mean, that is, the essence of our MPK, right? Our managed platform for Kubernetes is the ability to literally manage it for you. And I like that, Victor, you called out like our design, build, operate, and transfer model. And I think it's fairly unique, right? In that we're a support company that is literally building a program to not create vendor lock-in, right? And we are creating an avenue for you to be able to take ownership of your environment. If you have the team and expertise and just need some training, right? Need some help, a guiding hand to get started, let us help you. But and that is actually something we've been doing for a really long time, which is not to get overly salesy or anything, but it is it's something that we do, and we do well, and to create again that experience that you are not locked into our solutions. We can help you take your ball and go home.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I love that you kind of described it that way, especially talking about like the extreme left to the extreme right in terms of like where you are at in your journey, because obviously every organization is at a different point in their journey, in their maturity levels, and how much they've scaled and how much they've automated, how much they operate declaratively. Just so much is unique to each organization, and something that you even mentioned earlier itself. But really interesting that Rackspace solves for each of these different stages, whether it's designing and architecting, or building something, or even managing it and then transferring it to you. Really interesting model there that you described for us.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
And yeah, have you seen? Could you, without naming maybe a company, is there any example of one of your customers that comes to mind that probably went through all of these three stages that you could briefly describe for us without maybe naming exactly the company itself? Any use case at all that
Sure.
comes to mind?
Sure. Yeah, without naming the company, but I mean, we've done this for a couple fairly large telecommunications companies where they've come in, asked us to design, build, operate, and transfer cloud solutions for them, and that is working hand in hand with their already built-in embedded engineers, right? Their team, like these are These are telecom providers that have, you know, 100 years of operating infrastructure at some scale, right? Literal lines in the ground, not just virtual bits flying around in the ether. So these are companies who have dedicated teams and capabilities around that. And yes, we've helped them transition workloads from single node bare metal boxes or bare metal machines and rows and data centers and things like that into cloud-like solutions where they get that infrastructure, that infrastructure as code, that programmatic infrastructure and control that they're desiring, that they need in their data centers because they have a real need for a data center. And then also being able to modernize their applications. And yeah, we've done this with OpenStack. We've done this with Kubernetes. We've done this with a few other solutions along the way as well. But yeah, without going in, overly descriptive and telling you exactly who, we've also done, I think that's another big thing is that we've done this same work with not just telecoms, right? I think OpenStack has got a really well-established power base in the telecommunication space, but BFSI workloads are as well. Taking full advantage of these different ecosystems and platforms. And I think BFSI is a really good, unique use case too, because they are that historic IT, right? Like 200 years of managing people's, money, and that's important. And now they're trying to evolve. They're trying to be able to do something new and exciting. And a lot of the time they're maybe not on the forefront of technology, but they're also, but they're willing to, put their foot into it and figure it out and build out good application experiences internally and for their vendors, right? And that is, maybe that's virtual machines today and it's containers tomorrow, or a hybrid mix of the two. Or bare metal, right? We need to be able to, bare metal is not going anywhere. People using physical servers in a rack is not going anywhere. And is maybe more relevant than it has ever been, especially with all the AI, ML, GPU craze that's going on. But those bare metal experiences again is something that we can manage and we can bridge the gap between those two and create rich experiences for them. So yeah. Sorry, I don't have a name, but those would be the I'd say the two major verticals that we operate in, and kind of everything smattering in between.
Yeah, really interesting that you mentioned even managing bare metal. So how do you approach this in terms of tooling? Do you go more like trying to use like open source tools and vendor neutral tools? Or are you trying to build like a platform, a suite within Rackspace that uses some of those tools, but then also has your proprietary technologies that brings it all together? What's the approach you take with that?
Kind of a mix of all of the above, right? We try not to go out and create, a million things that are uniquely ours, that are 100%, owned, our IP kind of thing that we don't share internal, that has really low bus factor, right? We want to be able to create tooling and software that is maintainable and sustainable. And a lot of the time that is leaning into the open source ecosystems and contributing in those open source ecosystems, being relevant, being present in those environments, talking to those communities and solving problems that are maybe not necessarily a problem that Rackspace specifically has, but it's a problem that the community has. And we have an engineering staff that can kind of, bring it over the line and help out in those spaces. And so but I mean, like I said, it is kind of all of the above. We will create systems that are uniquely ours when we need to.
Interesting. I want to touch a bit on something that's been mentioned quite a few times here, especially by Kevin, OpenStack. And you guys are building things around OpenStack today.
Yeah, that's my fault.
I'm
I'm an OpenStack nut. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about, your excitement about OpenStack. What are you excited about? What are you guys building? What's happening with OpenStack?
I mean, there's a ton happening with OpenStack. OpenStack is unique in that it does virtual machines, bare metal, containers, and kind of all of the in between. It also has unique functionality around hardware accelerators, and which is not just GPUs, right? I don't know, like SRIOV and DPDK, network, virtualization functions that, create an accelerated experience for customers. Quick assist, again, using accelerators for being able to encrypt and decrypt workloads quickly, and being able to fragment or create virtual functions around them, right? And so these are all really exciting things that OpenStack does extremely well. And then married with Kubernetes, the RMPK and the managed Kubernetes platform that Victor is supporting and building, is really like a naturally synergistic system that allows customers to quite literally use the right tool for the right job. So yeah, I'm excited about it because that's my passion or whatnot. But and I have a flag behind me that says OpenStack. But I mean, it really is a unique platform, and it's hyper relevant, right? It's one of the top open source platforms being contributed to today, right? I mean, it's not a dead platform. It may not be occupying the media spotlight, but it's occupying developers' time, and people are contributing to it, and it is moving forward in new and exciting ways.
Could you make it a little more like tangible for us in terms of use cases where OpenStack really shines, where other solutions may not be the best fit?
Yeah, I mean, where OpenStack really shines is it's in the platform flexibility, the ability to adapt OpenStack to a particular workload. Like, let's say a customer wanted to have Ceph and NetApp and PureStore and a Dell PowerStore, and they wanted 4 different storage offerings and being able to give their developers access to those different offerings based on need, priority, availability zones, where the workloads are, or what's production and what's not, right? Maybe you're going to run logical volumes for development workloads, but you want to use your PowerStore for your production workloads, right? Where's that expensive capital going? OpenStack can actually orchestrate that for you and create the availability zones for those different platforms without having to jump through a bazillion hoops. It scales really, really well. I mean, in our collective clouds and our public facing clouds, right? We've got just under 30,000 active hypervisors, globally, right? Operating a couple hundred petabytes of object store. So it scales ridiculously well. But a part of scale is small, right? And so there's a lot of people who are wanting to be able to operate HCI clouds, right? Hyperconverged environments where they have 3 infrastructure nodes, 3 compute nodes, and all 3 happen to be a storage node too. And all 3 happen to be a network gateway. Again, OpenStack serves that workload. It has the ability to, that same code base that can scale to multiple regions, tens of thousands of hypervisors worldwide, also can run three machines, sitting behind you here on this podcast that are running silently. But I mean, so we have the ability to address workloads again where they need to be and how a customer wants to use them. And what's cool about that is that even if it is that HCI cloud, I can run managed Kubernetes on top of it and have a rich experience around it. Victor mentioned Magnum. That is an automated deploy tool for just stamping out Kubernetes clusters. And then we have our RMPK, which is that managed support experience around Kubernetes itself. And again, if I wanted that to be on bare metal, I have OpenStack Ironic that supports that. So I can manage the bare metal and then deploy my Kubernetes and have a rich support experience on it. If I want it all on VMs, I can do that too. So anyways, that's I think a real tangible workload where, having the ability to segment resources and then produce them in different project spaces, different domains, different availability zones, gives customers real power at, I want to say any scale, but also I know that any scale is overly salesy. Like it's not truly any, it is, but it is, at most different scales in which customers want to operate, right?
Just to put that slightly different, right? Kubernetes could do all of that stuff too, right? And I think that is the one of the biggest difference though is that as Kevin alluded to was the resource segregation, right? It's kind of native. It's built into Kubernetes, having multiple networks, right? I could go and create, my own 10 dot network that doesn't collide with, the enterprise network, right? So that segregation separation is really powerful. Yes, you could do this in Kubernetes as well, right? And there's nothing stopping you, but it's not sort of native, right? Multi-tenancy is not really there in Kubernetes today as a, first-class citizen, right? You have to add, add-ons to make it behave that way, right? As opposed to OpenStack, that is day one, right? So, and I think that's one of the biggest differences. I'm not saying that, you know, you cannot do this with Kubernetes. You can definitely do it with Kubernetes, right? But the ability to do that on day one and have the confidence to do that on day one, you know, is there for OpenStack as opposed to Kubernetes. Again, Kubernetes can do this. I could do taints. I could do, you know, specify workloads to run, and I could even, again, do additional tools like Capsule to say, you know, this project can only run on these nodes. Again, you could do all of these things, but then you end up where you're having to enforce all of that through like policy agents, right? Like through Kubernetes. And then who audits that, right? And again, it starts getting into a lot of like compliance reasons, right? So, or things that are not necessarily technical, but they're, you know, required by the business. So I think that's, to me, that's one of the best things that OpenStack provides you, is that multi-tenancy. And you can run, you know, every group can have their own environment, their own 10 space, or, you know, class B or class C network, private network space, and then expose it through load balancer. So that, I think, is the biggest advantage today of doing OpenStack.
That's fascinating. I think you guys both really described perfectly how, you know, these options are available and there's different routes you can take. And I think it comes down to a matter of really prioritizing what matters to you and how much effort you're able to put in on day one, as Victor said, or whether you want to, you know, not put your effort into, you know, configuring all of these things like multi-tenancy, and instead just go for something like OpenStack that lets you get started on day one itself. Comes down to priorities, comes down to how much resources you have, and what you want to do. And so really a lot of options there. And I think you both really described it well, just how to think through these different options and make these decisions. And like you said earlier, it's great to know that, you know, Rackspace supports either of these approaches. And it would depend on the organization and the workload, and I'm sure that you guys have a lot of opinions on how to choose, and, you know, once you get into the details, you know, but it's really fascinating, just this choice that's there, and how you see it, how to choose between all of these options. We're almost out of time, but I want one more. I wanted to cover just one more solution of yours that we touched upon a little earlier, Spot. This is a new offering, is what I understand from Rackspace. If you can tell us what is Spot, and maybe even give us a brief demo or a walkthrough of what it looks like, that'd be awesome.
Sure. I mean, so Spot is it is a brand new offering from Rackspace, and it's the first time we've done anything that's very similar to this, right? And that is, it is a market-driven compute workload environment, and giving customers the ability to run different workloads in our cloud, in our environment, running a managed Kubernetes platform that we are managing from top to bottom, and creating effectively a market for it. The hypothesis was, can compute be a commodity? And the answer is resounding yes. And so customers are coming in and effectively bidding for compute workloads inside of these different environments to get access to those different nodes, those different node types. And so, yeah, I'd be happy to kind of show you the interface, the UI, log in and poke around a little bit to kind of show you how it works, and talk a little bit about it. But yeah, that's, let me see if I can share my screen here, and we'll do it live.
So where do these instances actually run?
They run in our Rackspace public cloud.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So they it is globally available, redundant public cloud environment that has been that same cloud that we launched in 2012 that we've been maintaining this whole time is running these Spot workloads.
All right. And so there's a bunch of options for instance sizes.
There are, yeah.
Mhm.
And so we'll start with, all right, hopefully this is coming through, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, so this is Spot in a nutshell, really. And I'll move some things around here, but this is the welcome site. And as you can see, it's fairly simple. And it says bid from 0.001. an hour, right? And that's how much it costs you to run a compute workload. If that number could be zero, I would have made it zero, but our payment card processor won't let it be zero. It had to be a non-zero number, and this is the lowest they would let us do. And so when you're getting started, really, it is the page is very inviting and very simple, and intentionally so, right? It gives you an overview of what the workloads are, what we have available to us. If you want to run, what you get from these workloads as you consume these resources, how you access, some add-ons, some capability around that, and how you can automate with Terraform. How you can use the different services and systems that we have, and really have a fully programmatic infrastructure from top to bottom. And the Spot Terraform provider, I queued that up a little bit here, but that is, again, publicly available. You can grab it. It is within the Terraform registry, right? As well as the code being totally open source as well, right? And so you can go and poke at it. And if you have an issue with it, pull requests are welcome. So please send them our way. We'd love to interface with you about what we're doing there. But the our Spot platform is built on top of our OpenStack public cloud, and it's giving customers, that global scale, that global capability, and just packaged up in a different form factor. And so, if you look at our first principles, what we've built and how we're building it, everything is documented at spot.rackspace.com/docs, right? So looking at the information, one more call out before I log in is that there are, we can look at our everything, like if you have a question, comment, criticism, something that you want to interface with, or something you want to give us feedback on, there is a subreddit for RxC Spot. Go there, check it out. And send us information, right? If you're having troubles with it, if you're enjoying it, or again wanting to create these spaces and want to provide some feedback, we want to know. And it really does show the scale from which we're kind of operating, kind of talking about what we were talking a little bit about before, about bringing the technology to our customers and making it relevant, and then maintaining it over a long time. A lot of Kubernetes enthusiasts are operating out of Reddit, and so we created a subreddit for our platform to interface with those customers on. So anyways, yeah, it's there, it's novel, it's neat, and let's go and log in. So when you log into Spot, you have a bunch of different sign-in options. There's a username and password, Google, and GitHub. I'm using GitHub. It authenticates you into the space. You can create, a new organization. We'll call it demo. And as you create a new organization, it'll drop you into your cloud space. And when you go to deploy resources, you really, you can choose how you want to deploy them and how you want to bid on them. And so, we have a Generation 2 platform that just came out. We launched Spot in early January, and we're iterating on it really, really quickly. And so we have a new Gen 2 deployment and cluster management methodology, which is just faster, more efficient, more add-ons, et cetera. And again, how do we, bring these technologies into the space faster? You can select your data center in which you want to operate. And as you'll see, most of the data centers here are US, but it is global. It is a global footprint. And the whole reason for this is because it follows where our data centers are on our public cloud, right? And so DFW is Dallas, Virginia, Chicago, Hong Kong, Sydney, London, and San Jose. When you create your, overall spaces, again, this is where you put in those bids. Like if I wanted to bid for a A30 GPU, I can see that the current market price is 15 cents an hour, right? And so I can create a bid for, we'll call it 2, and we'll call it 16. That's my max bid price. And then I can enable my auto scaling, if I want to be able to automatically scale to meet my demand. But these are GPU enabled workloads, so we'll just call it at that. And then click save server pool, and it tells you straight, there's the max quantity, the max bid price, how much, it's going to cost you per hour. That the current market price is what you'll be charged, but I'm willing to pay up to 16 cents, right?
What if that changes? What if the market rate changes tomorrow?
Yep, yeah, you'll lose your instance. There are some ways to do some preemption prevention, and you get alerts on whether or not it's approaching your bid. But it is all market driven. So if somebody's willing to pay more for the same amount of resources, and the resources become constrained, well, then the lowest bidders are kicked out.
Okay. All right. Cool. So
Yeah.
don't run your really important workloads on this,
Well,
especially
yeah.
for.
Like create redundancies, right? And also, if you are going to put workloads on it that are important to you, make sure you're using volumes. Volumes are persistent. There's no preemption for volumes. You're just paying for the volume usage that you're using. It's the workers that are preemptible. And so if
Mhm.
yeah, you create redundant strategies for your workloads. But
Mhm.
coming up, like let's go look at DFW and we'll create a different server pool, general purpose, right? These are, in DFW, a virtual server extra large with 8 vCPUs and 30 gigs of memory is going for 0.005 cents an hour, right? So like, maybe bid 10 cents. And you have a lot of room to go all the way up without having to ever break the bank. But anyways, there are
Is
ways
there a
of,
way to
yeah.
is there a way to say I'm okay with this much of a maximum bid, even if the minimum bid changes? Can you like set any limit like that?
Not yet, but that actually is a feature that is on our roadmap, which our roadmap is public in GitHub. And so that feature for exactly that, being able to have a UI for scaled bids so that customers can set a max and be able to, be comfortable, like I'm willing to max bid this price, but if it goes over that, I'm willing to have this as the future, is something that we're actually developing and expecting to bring in early of 2025. But
Mhm.
And I
okay,
would
go
just
ahead.
say, sorry, Kevin, I would just say that, you mentioned not putting your critical workloads, the opposite, right? I think the workloads that here are cloud native workloads that are fault tolerant or are scheduled to go up and down, right? I think as Kevin mentioned is use the storage, right? Because storage is going to be there forever. And that's the key, right? And that's where, again, those managed services or help me do this, or how do I do this workload? That's where our other services come into play.
So I'm not going
Mhm.
to put in my credit card information live on the screen, that's just, we're not going to do that. But you can see that, it basically puts you in for, how to pay for the workloads. And then once you're ready, hit deploy cloud space. It takes a couple of minutes to get spun up. And once it's done, you'll have access to your Kubernetes configuration file, and you'll be able to begin deploying workloads into your cloud space immediately.
Right. Awesome. Wow.
Yeah. So
That's cool.
yeah, that's the high level, TLDR on how Spot works. And if you're looking at it and going, it's very simple, like especially if you're coming from some of the other Spot workloads on from some of the other providers, it's intentionally made to be simple. It's how much of a certain thing do you need? How much are you willing to pay for it? Go. And then let the market kind of dictate the price. And all of these different within our own documentation, the pricing documentation, everything else that we have online, all of the market prices are, updated real time and publicly. You don't have to log in. We're not trying to capture your data. It's not like a gotcha form. It's like it's all out there. Read it, check it out, and then deploy what you need.
Right. Wow. This is a fascinating conversation. But we come to the end of our time now. And before you guys go, though, I just want to ask a little fun question to get to know you a bit. What would you guys be doing if not for your job in tech? You got to you got to choose another career. What would it be?
I'll go first. So I think I would be a carpenter. I actually like woodworking, so I probably would be a carpenter. Uh, Although funny because I don't really like geometry, but I love maps. So I don't know how I ended up, loving carpentry.
I had a small phase during the pandemic of some woodworking myself, but yeah, really loved it too. Kevin.
I would be a pit master. I'd create my own barbecue joint.
Oh, okay. Wow.
That would
Neat,
be my
neat.
that would be my thing. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, thank you guys for joining. Thanks for a wonderful conversation. It was really interesting to hear about all that you guys are building over at Rackspace. And you guys described it really well and really, I think, got me and I'm sure a lot of listeners really curious and wanting to check out more of what you guys are building. So thanks so much just for the conversation. And we hope you'll come back whenever you launch something big to tell us about it.
Stay tuned. We're on the cusp of launching a lot of things very big. So yeah, we're looking forward to coming back and talking more about them. Thank you.
All right.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you
thanks
very
for all
much,
of our
Jermaine.
viewers. Thanks for all of our listeners and viewers as well for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. Go and check out Rackspace and all of their offerings on their website. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.